All right, Mr. D, let's talk a little bit about garden safety. So what do you want to start with that?
Well, it's hot out there.
It is
right
hot.
now. But first, let me say that gardening is one of America's favorite pastimes.
Sure.
It's a good physical activity for you to get involved in. Hunting season's closed. It's too hot to fish. so getting out there in the garden this time of the year is a good thing. It'd be good to spend an hour or two a day out there. Everybody would be healthier. You wouldn't have to go to a sauna. You save your sauna bill.
You're
right.
right.
But seriously, out there right now, it's important that you protect yourself. And, I work out in the sun every day. I wear a long sleeve shirt. I wear a hat. I wear work gloves. I work in the soil. And it's important to protect yourself when you're out there anytime, but especially in the middle of the summer. You have to make a conscious effort. You need to make a conscious effort to drink plenty of fluids right now if you're out in the sun, and you need to avoid alcohol and avoid sugary drinks and things like that. It's really, really hard to beat water, just good old water. You need to, if you're using power equipment, it's important to wear safety goggles and hearing protection. And I'm taking some of this information from the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. They've got a real good fact sheet on garden safety, and I encourage you to take a look at that. But insect control, chiggers and mosquitoes are very active this time of the year, and we got diseases out there that mosquitoes carry, so it's important to use insect repellent if you're going to be out, and that contain DEET. That's probably one of the best insect repellent out there, and be sure that you do that. Always keep in mind, put safety first, and in whatever you're doing. Many times in the garden we're dealing with tools that are sharp, hose, and I'm not talking about knee-high hose, it's a different kind of hose and shovels and pruning shears and things like that. Be careful when you're using them. Be careful when you sharpen them. And many of them do need to be sharpened, and sharpened tools work better than dull ones. But be careful when you're doing all that. Let me see what I've got over here on page 2. Know going back to the heat, know the symptoms of being overheated.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If you feel dizzy, if you feel nauseated, if you have a headache or something like that, stop what you're doing and go to the shade or go to an air conditioned area and cool down a little bit. That's pretty. If you work in a garden all the time out in the dirt, it's important to keep your tetanus shot up to date, because the tetanus organism lives in the soil, and if you cut yourself, you can very easily contract that disease. So it's important to keep your tetanus vaccinations up to date.
Sure. Let me ask you about.
Did I leave anything out?
Yeah, are ticks active?
What's that?
Ticks.
Ticks are. Okay. Ticks are very active right now, and they also carry some pretty bad diseases. The insect repellent with DEET will help repel those. Ticks, mosquitoes can be dangerous because of the diseases they carry. Chiggers can just worry the heck out of you. Now, if you have blackberries, and the blackberries are ripe now, or they're nearing the end of their production, and I guarantee you, I don't care whether you have tame blackberries or wild blackberries, if you pick them, you're going to get chiggers if you don't use insect repellent. And sometimes you'll get them even if you use them. But
DEET is some good stuff.
I think one of the things that I always try to do is just go get a shower real quick and scrub real good right after you've been out in the thicket.
That's a good idea. But
because that will get some of that stuff. Then you'll see if you've got ticks and things. You can
check it out.
You can pluck them off.
Yeah, we've actually had a few agents. Carol Reed's been one of them. Got attacked by a tick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to be careful out
I've
there as
had tick fever as well. I sure have.
Yeah.
And it took a long, long time for them to diagnose it because the symptoms were just so strange.
Right.
So
and
it's not good. It's not.
Really not.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Yeah.
And I guess something else to think about too, Mr. D. What about using ladders when folks are trying to prune and things like that?
Yeah.
That's why I try to keep my fruit trees less than 8 feet up. I'm not 6 feet tall. I'm 5'10", and I've got pruning shears that are 2 feet long, my loppers.
Right.
And so my fruit trees are just 2 inches short of 8 feet.
Right.
Because, you know, I'm not gonna work them from a ladder, and you just don't need to do that. If there's any way you can stop doing that now, with apples and peaches, plums, and nectarines, you can do that pretty easily. Pears are pretty hard to not let get taller than 8 feet. But I mean, and you got to be brutal with them. You know, you gotta really do some serious pruning in the late winter.
Right. Wow.
But I just do not recommend working from a ladder.
Okay.
Yeah, just get a professional.
Yes,
if it's
that's what I say.
above your head is
That's
what
right.
I usually tell people.
Yeah, it's not
Get
worth
you a
the
good
risk.
arborist or
Yes.
somebody who knows how to handle chainsaws way up
That's
in a
right.
tree and that kind of stuff. So it's just too dangerous.
Another thing in the garden, many times we use pesticides, so be very careful that you follow and read the label directions of
That's a good
pesticides.
point,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes.
Store them in areas where children can't get to them or pets can't get to them. You know, storing those pesticides. Make sure they stay in the container they came in. It's not a good idea to pour them up into a plain container because, you know, there's some pesticides out there that look like Kool-Aid. And that look like Gatorade and things like that. You know, the pretty green pesticides. There's, you know, gramoxone is a really pretty green color, and it's very toxic. And then, you know, Liberty is purple, and, you know, there's just a lot of real pretty colored pesticides out there. So leave them in the container that they came in, and store them, you know, and keep them away from kids and pets also.
Yeah. How do you dispose of those pesticides?
Use them for a labeled use.
Okay.
If you have extra pesticides left over, talk to some of your gardening friends, find out if they need them, and let them use them for a labeled purpose. The best way to dispose of a pesticide is to use it for its intended purpose.
True.
And that is by far the best way. I'd rather do that. Other than that, you know, you'll have to go to, you know, landfills and some toxic waste landfills.
Right.
So use it for the purpose it was intended to be used for. Don't overbuy, you know, pesticides. They last a long time if you store them. On the label it tells you how to store them. You know, try to keep them from freezing. You know, put them in a closed case, and you can store them, and you can use them for years and years. They last a long time. That's the best way to dispose of them.
All right, Mr. D, we appreciate that. Yeah, we want folks to be safe in the garden, no doubt.